Here it is, folks. The longest, most difficult podcast episode I'm going to make ever. We will rock you. Next on Crown Jewels. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Crown Jewels here on PLD Projects, Crown Jewels. I am your host, PLD, and this is the podcast where we listen to every song in the Queen catalog, chronologically speaking, every song, every version of every song, and figure out which version of the song is the best version of the song or the Crown Jewel version as we make up our ultimate playlist. And we do a little bit more than that as we go on, and you'll see. This week, ooh, this is a doozy. This one was a tough one to put together. I'm not going to lie. This is We Will Rock You, the most played, the most mixed, the most everything, basically. This Queen song is everywhere. Bohemian Rhapsody might be considered their magnum opus, but I would guarantee that We Will Rock You has gotten more play all around the world, whether it's sporting events, whether it's kids events, whether it's just people on their own, just beating themselves, boom, boom, just by themselves, stamping and clapping, stamping and clapping. It's just like it's amazing how much reach this thing has. It's kind of like the Star Wars of rock music. I think everybody knows this song, at least a bit of it. Even if you don't really know the guitar solo, you might not know the words. I think you do. You probably do, at least for the chorus for sure. This is a massive undertaking by me at this point. It may not even be long as far as length of episode, considering the stuff I do on Two Mediocre White Dudes on film. But my God, this is going to be a lot of work. Let's talk about. I think I collected all the versions that have been released live officially, or released officially or so. But you know what? I'm going to stop right there and say one more reason why this is the biggest. I actually had to divide this into two because whereas I've been trying to find the best version of the song, in this track, we have "We Will Rock You" the slow version, and we have "We Will Rock You" the fast version. Which, if this was any other track, I probably would just put on the same level and put them together and figure out which one between them is the best version. But there's so many different versions of these that I had to split into two. We do "We'll Rock You" the slow version, the studio version, now, and at the end of the News of the World, as a bonus track, I'll be doing the fast version of "We Will Rock You," which is more of the full band version of "We Will Rock You." But we'll get there. We'll get there. What do we have to listen to today? Oh boy. Okay, ready? The studio version, 1991 Hollywood remix, Ruined by Rick Rubin. The 1991 Ruined by Rick Rubin 12-inch. 1991 Ruined by Rick Rubin Big Beat Acapella. 1991 Ruined by Rick Rubin Ruined Instrumental. 1991 Ruined by Rick Rubin Zulu Scratch Acapella. 1991 Ruined by Rick Rubin Effects Acapella. 1991 Ruined by Rick Rubin Clap Acapella. 1991 Ruined by Rick Rubin CD Edit. The version 5 single version, that's with the boy band 5, the 5 radio edit. The John Farnham version, a version that Brian and Roger did with John Farnham. The Pepsi ad version with Brian and Roger did with Pink, Beyonce, and Britney Spears. The Von Lichten version that Brian did with Von Lichten for football purposes. I'll get there. BBC session number 6, Raw sessions, the backing track mix, the movie mix, the DMC remix, the acetate version, and then we get into the live versions. Live Killers, Rock Montreal, On Fire at the Bowl, Live at Rio, 1985, Live Aid, Live Magic, Live at Wembley twice, Hungarian Rhapsody, the Freddie Mercury tribute concert with Axl Rose, Brian May Live at the Palace in Los Angeles, 1993, Brian May Live at the Brixton Academy, Roger Taylor Live at the Cyber Barn, Queen, Brian and Roger together as Queen in Live at Amsterdam in 2002, Party at the Palace with the We'll Rock You cast, 46664 with Anastasia, Return of the Champions with Queen and Paul Rogers, Super Live in Japan with Queen and Paul Rogers, Live in Passaro 2005, Prague 2005, Live in Ukraine, Live in Riga 2008, Live in Zurich 2008, Live in London 2008, all Queen and Paul Rogers. The Olympics closing ceremony 2012 with Jessie J, the Candlelight Concert with Brian May and Carrie Ellis, Live in Japan, Queen and Adam Lambert, Live around the world with Queen and Adam Lambert. And there's a few alternative live versions, which I usually would cut out because I have so many, but these are very good, cool versions I need to listen to. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction with the Foo Fighters, the Songwriters Hall of Fame induction, the VH1 Rock Honors, again with Foo Fighters, the Prince's Trust with Tom Jones, Tom Chaplin, and Phil Collins, 2011 Starmus, Brian May with Tangerine Dream, finally, Brian May with Dappy. Yes, Dappy in the Live Lounge. You still with me? Are you guys still there? I'm not even sure you're still there. You might have cut out now. You know what? Usually I take you through these tracks bit by bit. We listen to them, and I'll give you the opportunity here to do that as well. Because I put all the YouTube links. Actually, I think I'm not able to fit this in the description. I think I'm gonna have to put a link to a Google sheet, which has all the links for those YouTube videos. But I wouldn't expect you to actually go through everything. Maybe you listen to what I have to say first, and then go, "Oh, that sounds like fun. Maybe I'll go listen to that one." But I'm going to listen to it. That's my job, to listen to all these versions and comment on them, and then rank them and go from there. So without further ado, let's get into the nitty gritty of it. All right, We Will Rock You, written by Brian May, features Freddie Mercury on lead and backing vocals, hand claps, foot stomps. Brian May on guitar, backing vocals, hand claps, and foot stomps. John Deacon, hand claps and foot stomps. Roger Taylor on backing vocals, hand claps, and foot stomps. That's right. There are no drums in this track. There's no bass in this track. It's the band with some vocals, a guitar solo, and them all stomping their feet and clapping their hands. It's impressive. Definitely impressive. Written with audience participation in mind, it's really become one of the most iconic songs in history. Issued as a double A-side single with We Are the Champions, and quite often played back to back on the radio. If you listen to the old radio, I know we're going way back now. We'll Rock You, We're the Champions, usually played right back to back. It did hit number 4 in the US. It also was released in Canada, France, and Italy. In the UK, though, interestingly enough, it was never released as a single. It was only released as a B-side to We Are the Champions, different than in the UK, than in the US, I should say. Played basically live at every Queen concert to the end of the set list, sometimes twice. When they introduce the fast version, sometimes they would open the concert with the fast version, or really one of the first 2 tracks, and they close it with the slowed version. That's how popular this thing was. It's impressive. Brian and Roger both played on their solo tours. Roger didn't write the song; he played it on his solo tours. And then they often, when they get together, is one of the tracks they would almost always go to. Probably because it's a simple one to do, right? Some quick quotes about it. Roger Taylor from 1984, modern drummer. Everybody thinks that it's drums, but it's not. It's feet. We sat on a piano and used our feet on an old drum podium. Rather hard to explain in words what we did, but what you hear isn't drums. We must have recorded it, I don't know, 15 times or so, with all sorts of different repeats on it to make it sound big. There's a catch, though. When you do Rock You live, I have to do it with drums, so everything is slightly delayed. Everything is to suit the song. To have just one way of working would result in the inability to change or adapt. A good drummer must be flexible. It's imperative. Brian May followed up in 1992 with Guitar World, saying, We'll Rock You was a response to the particular phase in Queen's career when the audience was becoming a bigger part of the show than we were. They would sing all the songs. And in a place like Birmingham, they'd be so vociferous that we'd have to stop the show and let them sing to us. So Freddie and I thought it would be an interesting experiment to write a song with audience participation specifically in mind. My feeling was that everyone can stamp and clap and sing a simple motif. So We'll Rock You was based on that. We recorded it at Basin Street, Wessex, which is an old converted church that has a natural good sound to it. There are no drums on the track. It's just us clapping and stamping on boards, overdubbed many times over with many primitive delay machines. Bit of singing, bit of guitar playing, and that's it. The amazing thing is to go to football, soccer, matches, or sports events in general and hear people do it. It's very gratifying to find that it's become part of folklore, sort of, and I'll die happy because of that. It's a great track. I'd say it is one of those things where it's so iconic and it's so simple, but it's so pervasive that you can't say it's not genius just because it's simple. Genius is its simplicity to a degree. But I've said enough already. I think we should just get right into it. We have a long track day ahead of us. We're going to start with the studio version of We Will Rock You. Like I said below, there'll be a Google sheet that'll be linked to in the description. You click on that Google sheet, it'll give you all links to many different YouTube videos of the version we're going to listen to. We're going to start with the first one, the album version of We Will Rock You. All right, there you go, the studio version. What can I really say about this that you don't already know, that you haven't heard for yourself? And I can't really dive deep into anything. It's a very simple song, like we said before. Foots, claps, and a guitar solo at the end. I will say my friend in high school said it was probably the most iconic guitar solo he ever heard. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I gotta say, it's pretty good. It's pretty up there. It's one of those that's most memorable. Something is the featured part of the song. Last thing I would actually say about it is the one thing you might not know, casuals might not know, if you're a hardcore Queen fan, you probably do, but that noise in the beginning, that vocal sounds like an right as the song begins. That is Brian May counting in. So it's 1, 2, 3. Oh, That last Oz, Brian May sang for. A great song, though. I mean, I got to say, it's overplayed is a bad word. I hate that word because it's not the song's fault. It almost makes it feel like it's the song's fault. It's not their fault it's overplayed. It's not the song's fault it got overplayed. It is overplayed in terms of that's hard for me to listen to it with a fresh ear, with a fresh because I've heard it a billion times. How many times can you really listen to something without kind of glossing over it? Every time you listen, it's kind of like you're not paying attention as much. I'm trying to pay attention more and more, especially to do this podcast. But this is one that's really got it hard to do. But it is great. It is great. Let's get into the alternates now, the variants, as we are in the multiverse era, right? The variants. Let's go into first ones we're going to listen to would be the Hollywood remixes done by Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin, a famous producer, known for producing many acts, especially Red Hot Chili Peppers was a big one for him, especially on this time. He was doing Red Hot Chili Peppers. And in fact, invited a few of his Chili Pepper friends to help him out on this remix, so to speak. So there's a big batch of them here. We're going to listen to, I'll have you listen to all of them. We'll come back. We'll talk about more of them. Click on that link to get to that Google page to give you all the links of all the ones that we have. We'll come back. We'll talk about the 1991 remixes Ruined by Rick Rubin. All right, welcome back. Rick Rubin remix Ruined by Rick Rubin. That's something in moniker he says for all of his remixes or a lot of his remixes. A little self-deprecating humor there, which I appreciate always. You saw we had 9 versions, the 9 remixes to do. There were a few 2 YouTube links missing that they didn't have them on YouTube that I could find anywhere. Maybe you had better luck than I did. Just to list them out, get the Hollywood remix, Ruined by Rick Rubin, the 12-inch version, the Big Beat acapella, the Ruined instrumental, the Zulu Scratch acapella, the Effects acapella, the Clap acapella, the CD edit, the Basic Beats sampler version. Okay, let's start off with the main one. I got this one from the 1991 United States Hollywood Records News of the World reissue as a bonus track. I like this version. I do. It's definitely different, definitely unique, definitely puts a different spin on it. Obviously, Rick Rubin has worked more along the funk hip hop kind of way as well. So you see that scratch in the beginning, the needle drop, got the percussion with echoes, a little bit of funk in the guitar during the verse, a little bit of that dancey doom. In the background, you got this big droning background until you get to the end, and that's my favorite part of the mix. My favorite part of the mix comes at the end, where the guitar solo gets kind of put on a loop, plays a little bit more than it does in the studio version, and all of a sudden, that's when the Red Hot Chili Peppers come in. Chad's big drums, Chad's big and Flea, the bass comes in, doom, 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 and they kind of jam out at the end there. For some sample, the voices kind of end it. I don't know if John Frusciante, the guitarist, is the one who's playing the guitar at the end, because there's definitely an added guitar solo, which doesn't come from Brian, doesn't sound like Brian. I don't know Frusciante well enough to say it's definitively him or definitively not him. It would kind of make sense since the Chili Peppers were there and, he had him come in and help him. But from the entries I've heard, I've only seen Flea and Chad named as participants. So the guitar soloist kind of remains a mystery. Might be John Frusciante, might not be. I don't think it's a Brian Mayante because it doesn't sound like him, but it is a pretty cool version overall. Now let's get into the other versions by Rick Rubin. The Ruined by Rick Rubin 12-inch version. You don't have a YouTube link for that, but don't worry, you're not missing out much. The biggest difference really doesn't have the needle drop sound effect in the beginning. That's really not that much different from that. So let's move forward to Big Beat acapella. This Rick Rubin mix featured a lot of vocals, bass, beat effects, and a few sort of scratching effects, but it kind of cuts off a lot of the excess of the main mix, really. So it's a little bit different, kind of a little more concise, a little more in tone. I actually like this one quite a bit, but we'll have to see where it falls in my ranking at this point when we get to it. All right, next, the Rick Rubin Ruined instrumentals. No vocals, just the instruments, but it cuts it up for the jam, which is like the most interesting part of the song. So if you're going to have the instrumental, I'd rather have the instrumental jam out section at the end. That's what would make this work for me. So I'm not a big fan of that one. That's what it is. Let's see, what's next? The Zulu Scratch acapella. Again, it features as more of the vocals. It's, like I said, it's supposed to be acapella, so it has effects in the vocals, a few echoes. Little else really added to it. It's kind of a very basic bones kind of mix. It does have the one power chord at the end that finishes it off. It's fine. It's fine. The Effects acapella version, again, no YouTube link there. But it's very similar to Zulu, but less overall effects in the vocals, but a few more echoes added to it here and there. So it's kind of like, which actually kind of is funny. It's called the effects acapella, but I found it was less effects than the others to a degree. I guess you count the echoes as being more effective. I'm not sure. It's an okay version, though. It's an okay version. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to spoil something right off the bat. My favorite version of these is the original remix, because the original remix does a lot of more interesting things. Everything else, when they slice it down, they just slice off these little snippets of it, and it's not quite as interesting as the whole piece is. But we'll continue. The Rick Rubin clap acapella, another one did not have a YouTube link. It had, instead of like the background, it had some claps in there. Basically, that's what it is. A few more scratching bits, a little more claps. It does feel like it's the best of the acapellas, because it does feel like it has the intent of the song behind it. It feels like it felt most like the original to a way, but still having a Rick Rubin influence on it, if that makes sense. Between the Zulu scratch, the effects, and the clap, I think the clap might be my favorite of the acapella versions, but we'll see. Next up, we have the CD edit. Also, no YouTube link there. It's a much more concise version. I know a lot of Queen fans who look at these actually prefer this version the best, because it's a very concise version, only 2.5 minutes. So it doesn't really meander as much as the full version can. I will say that full Rick Rubin version can kind of go a little long at times. It kind of meanders a little bit. Times where you could maybe use an editor too. But this one does that pretty much, but does keep most importance, except for the long guitar solo bit. It has a little bit of that jam session, but it kind of cuts off the jam session, which is my favorite part. So it's why I don't think I particularly enjoy it as much. I'm not sure what you can cut out of the beginning, because that is where it meanders. I admit that the ending part is where it meanders the most. But if you don't like the longer version, maybe this one would be more to your enjoyment. All right, finally, the basic Beats sampler version. Again, no YouTube link here for this one. Very similar to the main mix. There's a couple other effects. Most notably, there's this kind of like wow sound that kind of gets repeated throughout. It kind of keeps repeating. It's either buried in the 1991 Hollywood remix, or it's not there. I don't know. I can't tell sometimes. Sometimes what the remixes do, they just bring things up from the background that you can't hear originally. Otherwise, though, it's pretty similar to the main version. Just a few different things here and there. Nothing too big. You're not missing out on the YouTube link. That wow sound isn't all that, I'll tell you. So, all right, that's going to be for the Rick Rubin remixes. Let's move on to the next group of remixes. Queen with the boy band 5. I'll talk all about that next. Listen to these 3 versions. Come back for more. All right, 5. I skipped this version if I had to, but hey, it is what it is. It's a boy band version from the 1990, actually from 2000. The band was formed. 5 was the band. The group formed in 1997 by the same talent searchers, talent, whatever you want to call them, producers that launched the Spice Girls. 5 was started in 1997. In 2000, they released the album Invincible. And on that album, these guys covered "We Will Rock You." Although they didn't really cover it because they actually performed with Brian Rogers a little. I'm not sure how Brian Rogers got involved. I think you can call them sellouts, maybe. Some people would. The most cynical of Queen fans would call them sellouts. I always think they're just pretty much willing to do anything with anybody. Not necessarily they needed the money or anything like that. It was more just like, hey, you want to do my song? Sure. I like music. I'm willing to collaborate with anybody. It is mostly the background, which is the original track, it feels like, and then Brian Roger adds some stuff at the end, that's their section of it. And the lyrics are all different. Lyrics are all sorts. There's all sorts of boy band raps over it. I'm not sure who wrote it. Whatever. I'm not sure. I don't love it. Is what it is. The album versions there. The radio mix is pretty much the same with a little longer outro, a little longer intro. And the Millennium mix, there's no YouTube version of that. You're not missing anything. It's just a longer remix, about 2 minutes longer. They mash in several other songs. The most notable thing about this collaboration, 2 parts, is that this version actually became a #1 single in the UK, higher than the Queen version. I don't know. I don't understand it. I don't get life sometimes. But this is a #1 single for Brian May, as he is on he did write the track, and he's on the track with Roger, and yeah, 5 took it to #1. Also, 5 that year opened up the Brit Awards, which is kind of like the Grammys, and 5 and Queen actually performed together. Started off as 5, and the kind of a cool thing, if you ever look for that on YouTube, the stage part opens up and there's Brian Roger come out, and they're singing the end and jamming out the end. So it's fun, it's silly, it's not going to ruin any legacies. It's not something I really choose to listen to too often, but it is a part of the story. All right, that's it for five. Going to move on to another collaboration. Got a couple of collaborations we're going to do before we get into some of the raw session versions and everything else. The next one we're going to do, John Farnham. You'll know him from the "You're the Voice" singer, and we'll just click on that link in the on the Google sheet. Come back, we'll talk about that one. Somebody gonna put you back into your place. All right, that's the John Farnham version. Much better version, much better collaboration there, if you ask me. Basically, John Farnham, who was a teen idol back in the day, he was known as Johnny Farnham, but then kind of reinvented himself in 1986 when he sang "You're the Voice," written by Chris Thompson, amongst others. Chris Thompson actually has a connection with Queen. He was a singer for Manfred Mann, and for "Blinded for the Light" that Bruce Springsteen actually is famous for, or they're famous for it, for covering the Bruce Springsteen song. He also sang background vocals for Brian May and for the Freddie Mercury tribute concert with Queen on a couple of occasions as well, on something like charity events and everything else. But Chris Thompson was involved in getting in writing this track, and then John Farnham recorded it, and he reinvented himself and became a big hit throughout Australia, and he became a celebrity again for it. He would live off that for quite a while. During 2003, he decided to work with Queen on this "We Will Rock You" for the 2003 Rugby World Cup, ended up being released on his greatest hits album, One Voice, and they also had a single, Queen Plus John Farnham. Very interesting listen. I like John Farnham's voice. He's no Freddie. He's also, but he definitely has a rock sensibility to him. It sounds like he's got a good voice. He does it justice. He's not like bad enough flailing at it. But what is impressive about this one, if you've listened to it, is the arrangement. I love the arrangement. You have the first verse normal, second verse normal, then the solo comes after the second verse. And then after that, it comes back in with a slowed down third verse where you get a great rock out and with extended Brian May solo. This is a really, really cool arrangement. You'll hear the band actually do it later on their own. That's what's good about this version completely. The normal first verse, second verse, is basically the same Queen backtrack. I don't think they probably didn't change it at all. They probably just used the original backing track. But it's the ending arrangement that like, kind of kicks it into gear. Makes it a cool listen. One of my favorite collaborations they ever did. Not necessarily because of the guy, I like him. I wouldn't go for it, and just because it's his voice, but the arrangement is really kick-ass. So we'll go with that. All right, next up, another collaboration. This one, well, if they're selling out before, this is definitely a sellout if those people are going to say anything, because they're doing an advertisement for Pepsi in 2004 with pop stars at the time, Britney Spears, Beyonce, and Pink. Click on that. We'll come back. We'll talk about it. Buddy, you're an old man, poor man, pleading with your eyes, gonna make you some peace someday. All right, that was a big deal back in the day. Every once in a while, you have a commercial for television. I mean, not as much anymore, obviously. TV is not as big of a deal as it used to be. Now it's all streaming. Back in the day, you'd have these bigger commercials that become so big. You get like making ofs, and you get like different things, you get different views of it. And this was like a big one. I don't believe it was a Super Bowl commercial, or it might have been. It was, but it was like, felt like a Super Bowl commercial. That's how big this was at the time. A big making of it, featured a video. It had obviously Britney, Beyonce, and Pink as the stars as dressed as gladiators. For some reason, they go into this gladiatorial arena with Enrique Iglesias, who does nothing to do with the track itself. Enrique Iglesias is starring in the video as this like Roman ruler emperor kind of person. Brian and Roger appear in the commercial as members of the audience. Roger, for some reason, has a big drum and is drumming on it. It's a little. The video itself gives a bit. They're kind of have this cheering in the background. You kind of have them like suiting up to fight. They throw down their weapons and they start singing. Interestingly enough, it starts with a rocking Pink moment. She starts, "We will rock you," and it goes into Britney's verse, which is basically the Queen version. What's mad at crowd doesn't do much with her version. Very pop voice, of course. Then we go to Beyonce, which adds a little more of a remix drum to it in the middle, a little more her style than Britney was. And then Pink closes out the third verse, but obviously, I think it's pretty clear that Pink is the most suited for the track. She's the most rock girl of the three of them. But it was kind of cool seeing the three of them together. Much different performers, all of them. But seeing them all kind of gel on one song, it gels much better than I would think it would. Does feature kind of partially the Farnham mix as well, the Farnham arrangement, I should say, but does not intersperse it after the second verse. There is a different rock out kind of ending, which is sort of what happens during the Farnham mix. It's a good version. It's such a fun, silly version. Again, I just think sometimes some people take things too seriously. Am I going to choose to listen to it all the time? No, but if I see the YouTube, it comes up on YouTube, I click it and watch it again. It's fun. It's silly. All right. Next up, something that was involved in the Super Bowl, Von Lichten version. Queen plus Von Lichten coming up next. Check it out. Come back for more. Oh, there we are with that one, the Von Lichten version. If you know, Yes, Posthumous is the name of the band starring the brothers Von Lichten, or featuring the brothers Von Lichten, very electronic score. They were approached at one point to do the football song for CBS, the football theme song, which you watch football, you know the song. You definitely know the song. It's called Posthumous Zone, and that's what they put to CBS back in 2008. But then in time for Super Bowl XLVII, they did something a little different. Helmut Von Lichten worked with Brian May, and they mashed up "We'll Rock You" with the Posthumous Zone song. It was from the original "We'll Rock You" multi-track, so a lot of original Queen references. Then Brian added some new guitar work towards the end. Features the orchestral opening before the familiar stomp stomp clap comes in. So it had some orchestral bits from Posthumous Zone behind Freddie's vocal that add quite a bit of drama to it. It's very nice. Posthumous Zone gets more intense each verse. I swear that by the time the third verse comes around, it almost overwhelms Freddie, to be honest with you. It's almost so big. But then when the We'll Rock Yous are looped at the end and Brian comes in with a new solo instead of the older studio one, it's a bit slower, a bit more dramatic, a little more fit for the Posthumous Zone song in a way. We're getting this big climactic power punch ending. I mean, it got me hyped up for the football game. Hearing Brian change things up just a little bit. The arrangement's a little different here and there, but the adding orchestral work to Queen can never go wrong, even if it's electronic orchestral. I think this is a kind of cool, fun version. One of my favorites. So I hope you enjoyed that one like I did. But that's it for those versions. Let's get on to some of the earlier Queen versions now, some of the ones we didn't talk about before. First up, we'll talk about the BBC session. That's the next one we're going to listen to. Click on the link in the Google Sheet and come back, and we will talk about it. All over the place, singing, we will rock you. Okay, that's the BBC session for the slow version. It's kind of tough to rank this one in this setting. Basically, as I mentioned, I split up the slow version and the fast version. And what happens in the BBC session is that they play this slow version and go right from this version into the fast version, tracked it back, track to track. So really almost as one track. It should almost be played as one track. But it's tracked as two. And it makes sense as how we're dividing up the songs for this podcast. So only look at the slow version. Of course, that means we're left with one verse, and then it goes into the solo. So there's a lot to it, which of course is going to make it lesser on my list. If I'm going to have the crown jewel version, I want a whole version of a song. This doesn't feel like a whole version of a song. It's not really its fault, but it is kind of like a victim of my own kind of organization, I guess. What I will say is basically it's the same backing track, same mix that way. Freddie does have a new vocal take, a little rawer sounding, a little more like he doesn't have quite the voice he had on the studio day, perhaps. Not bad. It does feature an interesting ending, though. That's the ending. You're probably, what the hell is that? Basically, according to Greg Brooks, who is the Queen archivist, he had an interview in Record Collector. He stated, immediately after an explosion and just prior to the opening chords, a female voice cuts in briefly with an extract of a reading from Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. And how did this come about? At that time, only master tapes survived from BBC sessions, though the actual tapes used to compose them were recorded over later. When Queen assembled in the control room for a playback, they discovered remnants of a Radio 4 program on their tape. So the band incorporated a segment of this unusual material into their own work. So basically, that's what it is. They had the slow song. This reading comes in, which doesn't make much sense, but it's kind of unique and cool and everything else. And then it goes into the fast version, which we will listen to later on, for sure. But unfortunately, with the division, it's kind of feels almost incomplete. So it is what it is. All right, let's move on to the movie mix. That's right, from the big time movie Bohemian Rhapsody, Academy Award winning Bohemian Rhapsody. There is a good soundtrack, great soundtrack, and it features a movie mix of We'll Rock You. Listen to it, and then we'll talk about it. Sing it! All right, there you have it. Now, that's actually from the movie, and in the movie with the visuals, it works very well. They go from the studio and they jump to a live performance. When you're listening to just the audio on a soundtrack, if you don't know that's coming, it's kind of jarring. It just kind of has the first 50 seconds, and all of a sudden we're in a live version of it. With that being said, it's not said where the live version is taken from, and I don't think any Queen fan has discovered it. As far as I know, I could be wrong on that. If I am, please leave a comment. If you're a big Queen fan listening, let me know where the "We Will Rock You" live version comes from. It's a great live version, though, and I will love it because we get to hear an unreleased live version. It doesn't sound like any of the versions I've heard before, so we get an extra live version thrown in there. I'm all for it. The crowd is very much into it. Very loud, very powerful. But it is kind of a weird thing if you're going to listen to it at once. I can't call this a crown jewel because I wouldn't want to have it. You'd listen to a live one or the studio one. Having this kind of jarring middle works for the visual, not as well for the soundtrack. But so I'm glad to have it. So I'm very glad to have it. So, all right, I'm going to move on next to the DMC remix, a DMC remix. That's a remix by Paul Dakin. It was actually thought to be a bootleg for a long time ago. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I could be wrong. But they actually found that it was an official remix. Just ended up not being released for a while. We did find it, though. It is an official remix done by Paul Dakin. And so listen to it, and we'll talk about it when we get back. All right, there's a DMC remix. It's a very cool remix. For its time. It is exactly what the Hollywood Records would like to do quite a bit with Queen songs. Instead of dipping really back to the archive, I don't think they really had permission to dig too much in the archive. I think that's what the issue was from the EMI Mama Bear Studios, so to speak. They had a lot of people doing some dance remixes. Like I said, this one was Paul Dakin, maybe. I don't know exactly Dakin, but it appeared on a few DJ Mix Club compilation albums. It was eventually officially on the unauthorized club record promo CD by Hollywood Records. It's a club remix. It does its job. It strips the entire background of the track. No more of the stomp claps. Gets a club beat going, and the vocals are sped up quite a bit. But there's some cool things that are thrown in there. At one point during like the second verse, the middle of it, does this whole "Buddy, you're an old man, buddy, you're a young, buddy, you're an old man, buddy, you're a young, buddy, you're an old man, buddy, you're a young, buddy, you're a boy, buddy, you're a boy," and it plays the track a little bit, which is kind of cool. There's also some Bohemian Rhapsody samples thrown in there a little bit. This adds some extra instrumentations alongside the solo. Miles may vary. I mean, a lot of Queen fans in general aren't huge fans of the house or dance remixes, and I count myself as one of them generally, but this is among the less offensive, I think, overall. It's kind of fun. It's fun. It's danceable. It's good. It is what it is. So, all right, let's move on then to the next version, a very cool version, and News the World's 40th anniversary, 2017. They released a box set with some extra tracks in there and alternative takes. This was one of the alternative takes, the Raw Sessions version. So let's click on that, and we'll come back. We'll talk about it. Right, this will be take one. We will. Okay, there you have it. There, the Raw Sessions. Definitely a wonderful curio, if nothing else. It does have some studio chatter beforehand. You get to hear Freddie doing some acapellas, like trying out some things, warming up his voice, trying the lyrics here. Brian then counts it in. Obviously, it's a mix. They didn't actually just take that from a take. Which is kind of, I'm not going to lie, I prefer a full take instead of this mashup thing. And the reason why you can tell it's mashup, because Brian counts in 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you hear the stomp time claps. You hear that Brian 4, just like the main version. Definitely got some alternate Freddie moments. He feels a little more aggressive on this one to me. Got a right on vocals at some point. The backing track seems like the final take, as far as I can tell. Not much different there, but getting an alternate Freddie vocal is always awesome, and I love hearing the studio chat at the beginning. The big difference comes in the ending for Brian's solo. It's obviously not finished at this point. It's definitely still in development. It's a very noisy version. Kind of feels like he gets something, he has an idea for something. Middle, he doesn't know where he wants it to go, so he starts just making kind of like noises, playing on the slide a little bit. And it's like, cool, but like it's definitely not finished. Or it finishes up with the similar bit that Brian had, and then ends up with Brian's guitar after the stomps, and Brian still playing a little bit. So interesting alternate take there. This is the stuff I love for. I love box sets that give us at least other alternate takes. I hope we get more. I wish we would get more. We did get the Miracle box set, which had a bunch of different alternate takes. Hoping for more of that in the future as we move on. But yeah, this is definitely fun. Definitely a good curio. It is, like I said, an incomplete version, so it's kind of hard to make it a crown jewel, but it's going to be up there a lot more than some of the others because of the uniqueness of it. So, all right, let's move on to the backing track mix, which is also released on the 40th anniversary. You can click on that link and come back for more. All right, there is the backing track mix. I'll be honest with you, Queen does this a lot for some of their deluxe edition stuff, and they don't have anything more in the archive, or they want to fill out a deluxe version without dipping too much into the imperfections. They'll give you instrumentals. They'll give you they'll strip it off and give you almost karaoke versions to how the vocals, let you hear those, or vice versa, go the acapella and just hear those. Now, a lot of Queen fans will tell you that these are pointless, cheap, and kind of waste of times, and they should much be happier with the more archive stuff. And I agree. I'd much rather have more archive stuff. Although I do a lot of times like the instrumentals and the acapellas, because we do get to hear some stuff that we couldn't really hear because they were buried in the mix as far as the full version goes. Except for this one. This is one that I don't really find much value to at all. Because you have the stomps, you have the claps, occasionally you have the backing vocals, the occasional sing it. We do get the guitar solo at the end. But that feels the same. It just the whole thing kind of feels pointless, to be honest with you. It's not. I guess they did it for all the rest of the tracks, so you got to do it for this one. But this one seems like the most pointless version of that exercise. So it is what it is. I think I want to mention here before we go on. I also want to mention the acetate version, which is an unreleased version. There's no YouTube for it. There's no reason to click on it. It's not much to talk about either. All it is, it's from an acetate from 1977 that was released, or not released. That was just taken. It was made by the band in the studio, I should say. It just cuts out a little bit at the beginning. It starts immediately with Freddie singing "Buddy, Your Boy," and then the guitar solo kind of fades out a little early. That's it. No real difference. It's just shorter and incomplete. And yeah, but it is a different version, so I thought I'd mention it here. So, all right, that is the studio stuff. That's the studio stuff. We're going to go to the live stuff now. That's a whole other animal. Yeah, the Queen live era. First, all the Freddie stuff that he did with the band. Before his passing, we'll start with those. So listen to all of the band's tracks. That is Live Killers, Rock Montreal, On Fire at the Bull, Live in Rio, Live Aid, Live Magic, Live at Wembley '86, Day 1 and Day 2, Hungarian Rhapsody, Live in Budapest, and then we'll come back and I'll rank them and we'll go from there. Alrighty, there's a lot you can listen to. If you listen to all of them, I'm proud of you. I'm really proud. If you haven't, you just come and hear me talk about it. That's fine too. I get it. Maybe I'll listen to the ones that I say are the best. I think the best way we'll tackle this is we'll do a mini ranking. Obviously, we're going to do the big honking rating at the end, where I rank every single version in order. I'm going to do a little mini ranking in between. It's the best way to talk about it. We had 9 versions that we listened to, and I think that's almost all the officially released live albums versions that I could find. Might be a few more released on video cassette that I missed, or a download I missed here and there. But really, when you have this many, it's fine. It's fine. It's really fun. Let's start off with Live Magic as my least favorite of the bunch, and that's really because it's edited version. The good thing about it's taken from Queen's final concert in Nebworth in 1986. But like much of the Live Magic album, which I've mentioned before, they edited it down to hell to make a single disc out of the Queen '86 tour. Unfortunately, it took a lot of Nebworth stuff, which is at least we get to hear it in some way, shape, or form. There's bootlegs out there. We're getting to hear professional versions of the final time Freddie performed Queen. That's notable. However, it's just they truncated it down for the one verse and then the solo. It's not a full version, but it is kind of cool to hear Freddie on his last performance. Next up from there, I have Live Aid. Now, everybody's like, what? Live Aid's down here? Well, look, I'm looking for the crown jewel, the best version of the song. This is a great performance as part of the whole performance. But if you're taking out the singular song, it's truncated. It's just the one verse and then the solo. Freddie's really into it. Freddie's really powerful, but it is truncated to fit the Live Aid medley. So as part of the greatest, possibly the greatest rock and roll live performance of all time, as it's been voted a couple times, it's great. As a singular entry into a song, a crown jewel, what we're looking for, the best version of We Will Rock You, I can't put it any more than higher than Live Magic. All right, after Live Aid, we have both Wembley performances fitting in here. And a Wembley 1986, probably the most famous concert outside of Live Aid, one of their best-known live albums. One of the first really big live albums after Live Killers. This is the second stage performance, is my least favorite of the two. It's a very sparse version. It's not that it's bad, it just doesn't have much unique to it. It's interesting that Freddie kind of almost seems like he gets out of key because there's a lot of just him singing according to the verse. When Brian starts coming to the guitar part, Freddie just kind of has to take it down a tone a little bit. But it doesn't actually sound out of place, which is weird. It doesn't sound bad at all, but definitely is a little different. It's fine. It's good. Freddie's in good voice overall. But at the same time, it's just kind of nothing to write home about compared to some of the other ones. Day one, we had a longer intro. Band is definitely feeling their way into a little bit more. Not that they need to, but it just kind of feels like they're taking their time with it. Brian had some great moments in the beginning part. It's got a great sound for the stadium, I gotta say. Brian had some droning sounds during the third verse, which I found pretty cool. Just enough to stand out from day two. Unfortunately, I think day two was the actual one they released as part of the big concert. This day one wasn't released so much later on when the DVD came out, like in 2003, I believe. But yeah, it's still fun. It's still a good version. Next up from the Wembley dates, is where we got Hungarian Rhapsody live in Budapest. Also the same tour as before, as the 1986 tour, same tour as Wembley, same tour right after Live Aid. It's similar to Wembley in many ways. Freddie does bring out the Hungarian flag with the British flag in there. Some groove with Brian during the extended intro. The drums go for a bit because Freddie takes his time getting to the mic. The sound mix is really what emphasizes this over Wembley for me. I feel the sound mix is a little more in your face, a little more powerful, a little more crisp. I don't know. I might be insane when it comes to that. Maybe somebody else here did much differently. But when I put the two next to each other, the three next to each other, I should say, the Hungarian Rhapsody Budapest version sounds a little bit crisper, a little bit cleaner for me. All right, from there, we got Rio, live in Rio. Another great version. Queen has a long history with Rio. They perform even with Queen and Adam Lambert. They perform a bunch of dates in the Rio festivals. Queen owned these Rio festivals. They were very well received for 300,000 people. A big extended intro. Freddie comes out with the Brazilian flag and the UK flag together. Freddie's voice is a little bit tiring at this point. We had a long tour, a little bit not quite as good as some of the other ones still to come. But there's some added guitar at the end of the third verse. Brian adds on to it, which is pretty cool. Basically, it was this or Hungarian kind of neck and neck for me for different reasons. But I think I went with Rio because it kind of felt like more of an event, more of a powerful event, and the crowd was definitely into it. So. All right, from there, we're going to go to Live Killers. Of course, I get some information about Live Killers from queenlive.ca. My friend Bob has a great site there dealing with all of the Freddie era Queen stuff. He did a great Live Killers analysis. He'll tell you that this came from Frankfurt, February 2nd, 1979, and it's the whole thing. I've mentioned before for Live Killers, they actually spliced up different takes from different concerts to put the songs together, like in a Frankenstein style kind of way. This one they didn't do. We Will Rock You Slow version, all from Frankfurt, February 2nd, 1979, as compared to some bootlegs that were released from that time. Crowd very into it. It's definitely got a little more of a speed to it from the studio version, like you're just pushing it, not overly so, but pushing a little more intense as it goes. Not a lot of ad-libbing this one, straightforward rock and roll. Freddie in great voice. This one's a good one. This one's a killer. I like this one. No pun intended, Live Killers, right? All right, the last two we got here, the number two and number one. Number two, Rock Montreal. I love this concert. You'll know I've talked about the Montreal concert quite a few times over the course of the years. I've probably been doing this for a couple of years now. The fiery version, very, very peak Freddie controlling the audience. Nothing that's specific about it that's good, but it sounds good. It sounds crisp. Freddie's got a great voice. Brian and the band are really tight in this concert date. I like this one quite a bit, but not quite as much as my number one, On Fire at the Bowl, live from Milton Keynes in 1982. There's an interesting bit from Brian at the beginning, which kind of caught my ear. The drums are a bit louder than Live Killers and Rock Montreal. Given the open air stadium, it feels, or the open air arena, it feels like it's a very powerful moment. The crowd is really, really fully into it. I don't usually love the drums on Milton Keynes because Roger started adding some electronic drums to it, which I didn't always love, but he didn't use them here, or if he did, they weren't as noticeable. Maybe they just emphasized the really powerful drums he was using. Freddie seems very confident, very cocky, very powerful, very much in control of the crowd like he always does. Really when it comes to the Freddie era, especially these top 4 or 5, like it's all like your miles may vary. I could put this one fifth and the other one first. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. They're that close to each other. But if I had to pick one on this listen through, when I listen to all of these, it's On Fire at the Bowl from 1982. All right, let's move on to the Freddie Mercury tribute concert. That's right, Queen with Axl Rose. All right, there you have it. Similar to many of the Queen live versions we already heard, only difference is you have Axl's voice on top of it. Now, Axl does have a very hard rock voice, but he's very divisive. You either love Axl's voice or you hate Axl's voice. Um, the tenor of it, the most important part of it, is the sentiment, the fact. Axl Rose at this point was the biggest rock star at the time. He was definitely a big, huge Queen fan, so he sang it from his heart. It was a great, beautiful concert. The fans were eating it up. Queen's final performance, as it were, at the time. We didn't know they were going to go on and do anything more. Brian and Roger and John performing for Freddie, Axl performing for his hero. All the surrounding emotions of the day makes for a good, fun version overall. Stripping that away from it is a good version. It's fine. I mean, Axl's not my complete cup of tea. I like Axl singing Guns N' Roses songs. I mean, I have no problem with his voice, but I definitely prefer Freddie's voice, obviously. But yes, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good version overall. I like hearing it. I don't turn it off. I love watching this part of the concert. Axl really kind of showed up and made his claim for being the biggest rock star at that time. So it's a good version. It's a very good version. All right, let's move on now and look at the two Brian May versions. Brian May did these versions live in 1993, right after Queen kind of disbanded temporarily at the time. Brian was trying to step out on his own. Now, this is kind of a little bit like the BBC thing, though. Brian did perform it like the BBC version. He did the slow version, then went right into the fast version. Luckily, the one version, the first one you're going to listen to, the Palace version from 1993, was actually released in two different tracks, whereas Brixton Academy was not. So you're going to hear the whole thing with Brixton. You'll just have to concentrate on that first part. But come back, listen to it, and we'll talk about it soon. There you go. Brian May's version, the first one, Live at the Palace from Los Angeles, 1993, was actually just recently released on the Starfleet Deluxe sessions because from what I've gathered, I didn't know why it was done. I wasn't sure why it was done. But Brian May did Let Me Out, a song from Starfleet live in LA during that date. And according to the only thing that made sense was that it kind of entangled its way into We Will Rock You. So he decided just to throw We Will Rock You on kind of as a bonus track. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really have anything to do with the Starfleet stuff. But hey, I'm glad I get a different version of it. I'm glad I get this version of what was on release at the time. There's a bootleg version of it. This one definitely sounds better. This one is, like I said, they did divide the track up, so you only get that slow version. But man, I got to tell you, while it sounds incomplete, it does have Cozy Powell giving some very powerful drums. I love Cozy Powell. He performed with a bunch of people over time. Emerson, Lake and Palmer. He pointed to Black Sabbath. He was really a soulmate for Brian, drumming the soulmate for Brian post Roger before Queen really reunited. Cozy Powell unfortunately passed away in 1998, which interesting. I wonder. I'm just going to say it now. It does. I've sometimes wondered whether if Cozy had passed away, whether Brian would have come back to Queen or not. He probably would have. He probably would have come back to Home eventually. But him and Cozy definitely shared a lot of musical love together and definitely worked well together. So. All right, that's the Palace version. After that, we have the Brixton version, which is the other version. This one requires a little bit of imagination. Like I said, it's the unseparated track. This LA version sounds better because I think it's probably because it's got more recent technology on it to scoop up the best sound. Brixton Academy, the live Brian May band, did release one solo album after his Back to Light tour, featured several Queen tracks, including this one, is supposedly getting the remastered treatment like all of Brian May's solo material. So hopefully we'll get a better version of this, and maybe I'll have to redo this episode when that version comes out. Although I can't, it'll change too much because it's the same version, just might sound a little crisper, sound a little cleaner. But both versions are cool. I like hearing Brian's voice. Brian's voice has definitely got a little gruff to it. It's real grit that works in both this version and the LA version. He is still younger enough that he can pull it off. He gets a little older. He stops being able to pull off some of the rock and roll stuff as well. But here he still got it. So I do like both versions. They're fun versions. Yeah, there you go. All right, going to move on to the one officially released Roger Taylor version. That's right, Roger, even though he didn't write it, still performed it a bunch of times on his solo tours. This one was the one that was released officially, kind of, at the Cyber Barn. So listen to that track and come back for more. Gonna be a big man someday. You got mud on your face, big disgrace. Well, there you go, live at the Cyber Barn. The Cyber Barn was Roger Taylor did a concert right around the time of his Electric Fire album. You set the Guinness Book of World Records for a live streaming concert back in the day, 1998. That was big. or during the dial-up era, you can see how that would have worked. But he did get the record. I forget off the top of my head what the hits were. It's nothing compared to today, of course, but at the time it meant something. Roger does this song and did it with a lot more originality, I think, than Brian did on his live versions. Brian wrote the song, so I guess you can see him doing it more close to home. Roger decided to change it up a little bit. He had a second drummer with him, adds this underlying bass drone to it, makes it sound a lot more ominous. The drums kind of trade off in the beginning. There's this big drum fill before the funk guitar part comes in. Roger leaves the drummer behind to step out in front of the mic, step out in front of the band, or the front of the band for the concert as well as it goes. And then he plays this big riffing part, and all the instruments dropping out. That first part of the verse, buddy, you're a boy, make a big noise, playing in the street, be a big man someday. You got boom, and the thunder comes back in, and then you have the dun behind him. It's really kind of cool. I really kind of dig that version of it. Keeps the song going in a different fashion. It's definitely unique, definitely stylistic. I love that choice. Roger's voice works very well with this arrangement. Very well in general. I do love him in there. But I love the ending as well. Roger goes back to the drums during the guitar solo. You know, this nice little drum off at the end with the two drummers. Really powerful. What a great way to kick off a concert. I did love this version quite a bit. Spoiler alert, I kind of like it more than Brian's version, to be honest with you. But again, I think as I get older, I find myself leaning more towards Roger as my favorite non-Freddie Queen member. I think Freddie's always going to be the favorite of mine, but Roger's pretty close second at this point. Not saying I hate Brian. I love Brian's stuff too, but this is one of the reasons why Roger's one hits it for me. So. All right, let's move on from that. After Roger, we're going to go to Amsterdam 2002. Brian and Roger back together. All right, Amsterdam is when Brian and Roger, they started getting back together after the We'll Rock You musical. Obviously, had Made in Heaven '95. They had No One But You, that tribute song to them. They started doing the musical We Will Rock You. After that, they kind of felt more comfortable with each other, as possibly going out as Queen. John had decided to retire after No One But You, and no harm, no foul. All power to you to do that. Brian and Roger decided they wanted to go on and do some stuff. Before they hooked up with Paul Rodgers and later Adam Lambert, they kind of had some charity gigs they would do. They just a few one-offs here and there with guest singers, them singing here and there. No real replacement per se. They sang a little bit, Brian sang a little bit, Roger sang a little bit. They've had some guests come in here and there, some backing vocalists with the lead vocal for a song kind of thing. Amsterdam was one of those days. It was the Queen's Day in Amsterdam. The Dutch Queen is a celebration, and I'm not sure how the band got involved. Maybe because it was Queen's Day. Somebody asked them. They figured out the how. We'll throw it in there. And they did We'll Rock You there. That live version was released on a CDR for the fan club at some point. It's definitely out there if you want to find it. And it's on YouTube now as well. This, I got to say, depending on everything else, it's fine. It's a fine version. Brian's voice isn't quite as strong here as it was during his '93 tour. The sound mix isn't the best in the open air setting. It's a more normal arrangement. Nothing really stands out. And I guess that's the crux right there. Like, there's nothing that really stands out. Then why would I pick this over a more Queen related one with Freddie or something that has a different arrangement or something like that? This is just a fine standard version. Not bad, not great. It's fine. So it is what it is. All right, next up, we got the Party at the Palace. Brian May, Roger Taylor doing We Will Rock You in Buckingham Palace 2002. They do have the backing of the We Will Rock You cast, as well as help from another drummer. You might know his name, Phil Collins. All right, take a listen, and we'll come back and talk about it. Well, there you go. More famously from this concert was obviously Brian May doing God Save the Queen from the rooftops of Buckingham Palace. But hey, this is pretty cool too. Roger just sang Radio Gaga. He comes back. Phil Collins starts the drums for him. Roger comes back and adds his drums into it. Brian May comes up with his guitar, stands in front of it, does a great lead vocal on it. This actually sounds much better, surprisingly, considering it's the same time frame. This one sounds better than Amsterdam as far as I'm concerned. He does have the backing of the We Will Rock You cast. Great time, great fun. It is only two verses long, so I got to note that, if it were. But it's a fun version. It's good to have on record. All right, one more left of these charity gigs before we get into the Paul Rodgers era. This is 4664, great charity for Nelson Mandela, features the pop vocalist Anastasia. click on that Google Doc, listen to it, come back for more.
Buddy, you're a young man, poor man, smoking with the street.
All right, there you go. That's the Anastasia version. What a great charity that was. The 46664. A great Nelson Mandela. Queen became very associated with him throughout this time frame, always working with him, doing a couple of concerts for him. What a wonderful man, what a wonderful occasion. And Queen really, this is the first time Queen really set its mind to doing something. They really took over this concert. They put on this concert in Cape Town. They were the featured act. They did a lot of different songs. They came out a lot of different times. They closed the concert out. This is the one that he did with Anastasia, who was a pop artist at the time. I don't know if she's as well known now. Again, I lose track on pop sensations. I will say that this is a decent version. Anastasia has a very throaty, sultry version, which is a little different than the pop stars we're used to getting. Still a little off kilter for me, but it's fun. For the gig, for the charity, seeing her up there rocking it out as best she can. I had a lot of fun with it. Again, I prefer a full-out rocking voice, something you do with male or female. Just this is a little too... not that style for me, but yeah, it is what it is. All right, so let's move on then to the next version we have. The next version we're going to talk about now is, well, a bunch of them. We're going to talk about a bunch of them because we're moving on to the Queen plus Paul Rogers era. All but one of the Queen Paul Rogers era is going to be mentioned here. There's another unreleased one we'll talk about at the end. But this one, we have 8 versions to listen to. So let's get into those. Click on that link, come back for more. All right, I have to admit as I go through these, I'm listening to you all in the same day. So some of the stuff is starting to kind of blend together for me. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to do my best to keep fighting through, make sure you get the best versions that we can. But definitely as you start going into like 8 versions of Queen and Paul Rogers, they all are very similar. It's all basically the same arrangement. It's basically a Your Miles May Vary take on it. And what I mentioned before at one point does feel like sometimes overplaying things can hurt. As far as like, for example, Return of the Champions and Live in Ukraine were the 2 officially released live albums. So the ones that got played the most by me. So the ones that are probably getting up and down towards the end because I hear the different versions they do and some of the downloads that I don't listen to quite as much. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. I like that. Try to do my best not to make sure it doesn't happen too often, but can't lie, it's probably going to happen. In fact, let's rank these again. I'll do another mini ranking like we did for the Queen Live era with Freddie. We'll rank these from 8 to 1 as far as Queen and Paul Rogers go. The lowest on my list, it is Return of the Champions. The officially released live album, Live at Return of the Champions, live at Sheffield 2005. Great version. None of these versions are bad in any way, shape, or form. I do feel like this was towards the beginning of the band starting to tour together. I feel like they haven't quite gelled as much as they will as we go on. But that's not saying they're bad here. It's a similar arrangement, regular, normal arrangement, like the Queen Live days. No, they're not doing the Farnham stuff. They're not doing anything like that. It's a straightforward arrangement for Paul. Got a full Roger sound, which is some of the best that all these mixes. It's all Roger being a hero. This one has a great Brian in the intro and some Paul warbling, which works. Paul's voice works very well in this track. He blueses it up a little bit. It's very similar to a lot of their stuff, but I do like the part at the end where he goes, Queen will rock you at the very end, right before the guitar solo. A little deferential to the band there. Paul, a hero of the band, it was very nice of him to agree to go out and do mostly Queen songs. In fact, I think I mentioned this before when they went out. Brian and Roger suggested doing a 50-50 since Paul has so much material with Free, with Bad Company. But Paul said, you know what? You guys have been on tour for a long, long time, over 20 years. Let's let you guys do at least 75% Queen, 25% of my stuff. So good for him. But he does a great version of the song. I'm not going to lie, great version of the song. Up from there, we have Live in Zurich 2008. This one I don't really have much to talk about here. There's nothing really stands out. Like I think I said for Return of the Champions feels the same way here. Still that good, powerful drum sounds, still a great arrangement. It's pretty much a straightforward version, much like Live in Ukraine 2008. The only reason that these are above Return of the Champions is that by now the band has been touring together for a couple of years. They really kind of feel like they have gelled. They really feel like a tight unit. There's not as much like feeling their way with each other. They know what they're doing. They're a well-oiled machine by this point. That also basically includes London. Although London has a few playful moments, I kind of found out a little bit, nothing specific I want to throw out there, but I did find myself perking up a few more times when I listened to Europe and Ukraine. So I put London in there. Riga has a very playful version. Riga in 2008. It's a very playful version in the beginning. It does settle down to be more typical Queen and Paul Rogers fare. But I did like the beginning where they kind of almost like they were been together so long that they can play around a little bit more and feel their way through a little bit more. Try some things out. Okay, from Riga, we go up to the Super Live in Japan. It was actually released in Japan only on DVD. Very similar to Return of the Champions, but it does feel tighter. I just felt a tighter version than the other ones, a little more solid. The sound is really good on this version, so I appreciate that, of course. And from there, we have the 2005 downloads from the Europe Live download tour during the course of the European tour in 2005. The band released online. They released a couple of tracks from the concerts that went along. Did it again in 2008. I wish they did that for the Adam Lambert era. There's a lot of cool things we could have gotten from there. But I did. I'm happy we got it for here. Pissarro, you didn't get to hear. Prague, you did. All basically it's similar versions. Pissarro's not much different than the rest, but it's just a very solid, good version. Prague is my favorite. I did like Brian had some wailing during the second verse. I kind of dug. Paul added some great little difference. He had a couple different line deliveries that I kind of really liked. It seemed like he was really going for it with someone's full voice at some point. So Prague 2005, the download, that's probably my favorite of the 2005 of the Queen plus Paul Rogers tour era officially released stuff. Maybe you're different. What do you have to say about it? We'll find out where this all falls into play within the overall We'll Rock You at the end of the podcast. But for now, that's what we're doing. There we are. So let's move on to our next one then. We got the Olympics performance from 2012. London hosted the 2012 Olympics. They had a great closing ceremony, one of the more memorable ceremonies we've had in a while. Of course, was Britain, of course, has so much musical talent from the past 40, 50 years that seeing all these people come back into play was just phenomenal. And Queen did get to make a momentous appearance. And we'll talk about that next. Click on the link. Come back for more. All right, there you have it there, performing with Jessie J, a pop star who I've forgotten about. I don't know anything about her. I haven't heard from her. I don't know if she's big at all. I don't like follow pop as close as I used to. I don't think she's around much anymore, but that's okay. She's definitely bigger in the UK, I believe, than in America anyway. This is like the Freddie tribute concert. It's more about the momentous occasion than anything else. London getting all those acts together, big time closing ceremony moments. And it starts off with Freddie doing a sing along via video. And it's great seeing Freddie come back. And I've actually got to be honest with you, all the acts that performed, I think Freddie got the biggest reaction. They were singing along with them, doing Deos from Wembley. It was kind of surreal that a Freddie voice could get that big of a response compared to other bands who actually were there. After that, Brian got to do a little bit of the Brighton Rock guitar solo, way along a little bit as he worked into it before breaking into We'll Rock You for the finale performance. Ryan and Roger in the middle of the arena, Jessie J coming down with a awesome dress on. It's fun. It's unique. But again, most of what's fun and unique isn't really part of the song, it's part of the momentous occasion. I'm not a big fan of Jessie J's voice. Too poppy, kind of like I could throw away all the pop stars who do it. It's a rock track, not a pop track. But it is what it is. It's still like I'm not going to decry it. It's fine. It's fun. I like the pomp and circumstance that Brian Roger put to it. That's more about the performance, the visual performance rather than the musical performance. Especially considering Brian was the only one who was live. The rest was to tape because the Olympics were pretty scared to do it otherwise. So Brian's live. That's all I'll say about that. Let's move on then to the next one. After the Olympics, we have the Candlelight concert from Montreal in 2013. Brian with his muse, as it were, in the later half of the 2000s, Carrie Ellis. Click on that link. Come back for more. Make a big noise playing in the street. Gonna be a big match someday. There's not much to say on this one, honestly. It's the same, similar time run. Nothing really stands out. Carrie Ellis. Carrie's fun. She's a fine vocalist. I actually like her rock vocals more than some of the other pop/musical people that have performed with the band. I think Carrie gets a little too. I mean, they cut her a little bit too deep. They kind of gets a little too much crap thrown at her for her attempts at Queen songs. And I get some of it. Obviously, she's a West End star. She's not a rock and roll star. She does fine though, and when she gets really growly sometimes, I think it actually works a little bit. But not really, this is not a song for her. Brian does fine. There's nothing spectacular about it. Nothing stands out as being, oh, I gotta listen to this version. But if I were there at the concert, I would have been clapping along, stomping along, and having a good old time with it. It's not bad, just nothing that really super stands out. So, all right, let's move on to the next version. We got two officially released live versions from Queen and Adam Lambert, from Live in Japan and from Live Around the World, which is from the Sydney Firefight concerts in 2020. Click on those links. Come back. We'll talk about those. There you go. Both versions are pretty much the same. The band gels well together. Adam is definitely more gelled with 2020. I was there. They've been touring for almost 10 years at that point, about 88 years at that point. Where 2014, they were still kind of figuring themselves out. They had just finished their first big U.S. tour in 2013. 2014, they kind of added a few dates here and there. They're good. Adam does have swagger. He has cockiness. He has confidence. He does sometimes, especially in the harder rock songs, and this song for sure. For me, I think he kind of sounds like a little boy trying to be the man. A little bit of that in there. It's not bad. It's not awful. It's actually better than a lot of the pop music stars will have tried to do. But there's definitely a little stagecraft to it, a little bit of Broadway to it. Whereas I'd prefer the more rock and roll growl and emotional grr to it. But it's fine. It's good. It's not to build the song. Actually, not unlike they did with Queen and Paul Rodgers. There's not much in just terms of changing it up too much. It's very similar. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Overall, I'd say I like the Sydney one better, a little bit better than the Japan one. But he feels like he's kind of taken ownership of his role as frontman at this point, and he just has got a little more confidence. So I like that version a little bit better. So, all right, let's go on to the not officially released ones in a way, or they're released in weird kind of ways. I got a few ones to go over before we close this out. Next one we're going to talk about is a fun one: the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. We can open it up by doing a version of "We Will Rock You." Hopefully, by now, I didn't tell you to go click the link and listen and come back for more like I usually do. Hopefully, by this many versions of the song, you knew what to do. If not, pause me now and click and go back for more. But Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Brian and Roger were on hand, and they were inducted by Foo Fighters. Foo Fighters, of course, being great friends to the band. I mentioned that quite a few times over the course of the years that post Freddie's passing, Foo Fighters and Queen are almost synonymous. Taylor Hawkins specifically loved Freddie. Brian and Roger loved Roger. L. Roger's son is his godson. Dave Grohl always loved the band. So they ended up getting together quite a few times and becoming great friends. And so it made sense that they'd be inducted by Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins, who would join them later on. We've already gone over and Tie Your Mother Down back in the Day at the Races era. This was a little different. This is the opening of the ceremony. Brian and Roger did a song by themselves. They chose to do "We Will Rock You." Steve Barnacle was on bass. He was there. Brian and Roger did a cool arrangement. It's a lot like the Farnham arrangement, not quite as extended. I don't know if it was because there was a TV time involved and he wanted to cut it down a little bit. Brian comes out and says, "Breakfast is over." There's these kind of induction ceremonies. They start with all the rich folk in the front sitting at tables. So he's trying to gear them up. Does it work? Not the same as a live rock audience, but it is. They do what they do. As far as the arrangement goes, Brian does the first verse and the second verse. They had a solo, and then Roger drums comes in, and then Roger sings the last verse, which I love. I love getting to hear Brian and Roger trade off on vocals here. That's one of my favorite bits. So right away, this syncs up the list for me. I love hearing that. And then Roger gets this great drum off at the end there. It's a lot like the Farnham, just a little more concise than the Farnham arrangement. But solid choice. I do like this one. I watch this one quite a bit. Good version. All right, let's move on to the next one. Another Hall of Fame induction. This is from 2004, the next year, also in New York City. This one, the Songwriters Hall of Fame induction. And this one's a good one. Click on that link. Come back for more. Buddy, you're an old man. All right, there you go. That's a good version. That's a great arrangement. It is the Farnham version with a little more extension this time. They decided to get a little more time, adding some cool keyboard swirls there before the last verse, which kind of made it a little more epic, with Roger drumming like the little tune time. Buddy, you're a man. Oh, man. And Brian's voice really kind of adding this girl to it. The only difference, I'd love to have Roger done the third verse again, like he did in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. Besides that, this is near perfect version for me. And the blistering solo, great drum parts at the end, great musical parts, very powerful, plotting, rock and roll. We will rock you. Yeah, great arrangement, great version. I love this one quite a bit. Hope not to my hand too much there. Maybe I just did by saying that. We'll find out. We'll find out at the end as we're getting close to the end. Only a few more left to go. We have 4 more to talk about, and then we'll get into the finale where we start actually ranking this son of a bitch. All right. So, all right. Next up, we got the VH1 Rock Honors from 2006. This is also Queen and Paul Rogers an entry, but it also includes the Foo Fighters once again. So click on that link, come back, and we'll talk about it. All right, in 2006 in Las Vegas, VH1 tried a special called VH1 Rock Honors. They did 2 shows like this. In the first one, they were honoring 4 legendary rock acts. Queen was one of them. Queen and Paul Rogers were on tour, so they agreed to appear. And they were talking with the Foo Fighters were there as well. The Foo Fighters, again, performed for them and with them. In this time, they did We'll Rock You with Dave Grohl, Taylor Hawkins, and Roger Taylor all sharing drum duties, which is the cool part. This is the most unique part about this. The sound is phenomenal. That overpowering drum solo or drum beatings for the 3 of them, adding some cymbals, allowing himself to break off a little bit. Paul just comes in, does his version proud, is standing in for Freddie there. It's a great rock roll version. I love seeing Dave and Taylor. Well, every time I watch Taylor drum, he's got this big old shit-eating grin on his face, and even more so when he's performing alongside his idol, Roger Taylor. So it's just a feel-good moment, powerful moment, great fun. I love that version. I love this version. So, all right, next up, we got 2010's The Prince's Trust, a charity concert that the Prince puts on in the UK. This was the closeout of the concert. So it was Brian May, Roger Taylor, with a bunch of the cast of the night, mainly featuring Tom Chaplin and Tom Jones. Tom Chaplin from the band Keane, big Queen fans. Tom Jones, who need no introduction. A bunch of other people as well. We'll click on that link. We'll come back. We'll talk about it some more.
Buddy, you're a boy, make a big noise, being in the street, gonna be a big man someday.
Right. What I can say about this one is that I actually am surprised that they didn't close with the Champions. That's the usual charity type big sing along when the whole cast comes on and makes for a great ending. They didn't. They just closed out with We'll Rock You, which makes for the one big difference of the song, besides the fact that it's about a billion lead vocalists during this. They all trade off different verses. Jamie Cullum was a pianist, gets a verse and hands it back to Tom Chaplin, who wasn't quite ready for it. That was a funny moment. But the biggest difference is the ending. They have this kind of dramatic, big dramatic finale type ending because it's the last song of the night before they bow. It's cool. It's cooler in Tom Jones singing Queen song. He can do it all. He really can. Even though he's not rock and roll, I don't care. He still sounds kind of fun. Has some nice harmonies to the track. Some female vocalists adding some harmonies to the track. It's a good version. It's a good version. It's a fun version. Not a crown jewel. Definitely other versions I like better, but this was definitely a fun finale for that the Prince's Trust concert. So, all right, got 2 left. One, Brian May and Tangerine Dream at the Starmus concert. Click on that link. We'll come back and talk about it.
Waving that banner all over the place, singing.
All right, that one's kind of a hard one to figure out. They only have We Will Rock You really in the middle of the 12-minute Tangerine Dream track, featuring also Brian doing some Brighton rock and doing some solos throughout there. There is a We'll Rock You in the middle. I want to concentrate first on the important part of it. This is the Starmus International Festival. There's been 6 of them so far. It was an international gathering that's focused on celebrating astronomy, space exploration, music, art, and science, such as biology and chemistry. Founded by an astronomer, Garrick Israelian, and also from Brian May. Brian May was heavily involved in this beginning. Festivals feature a lot of different people, like such as Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, Richard Dawkins, Stephen Hawking, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Alexei Leonov, Jim Lovell, Brian, Jill Tarter, David Grinspoon, Neeson Kaldenberger, Kip Thorne, Rick Wakeman, again, Tangerine Dream, Edgar Froese also was a big part of this 2011 concert. Brian May has been there a few times. He's done a few different things along the way. This one, though, was recorded and released as Tangerine Dream. All that being said, I like the concert. I love the idea. I love the idea of the festival. And I love the idea of these jams they sometimes do. And I actually like this, but not the We'll Rock You part. Everything else, I love the wandering instrumental stuff they do. That's actually kind of a fun listen to and very almost like Pink Floyd-ish in a way, to turn off the lights and kind of click it out. But We'll Rock You is just, well, no other way to say it. It's painfully slow. It's a painfully slow version. It's hard to get through. Be honest with you, hearing Brian at the beginning is great. Hearing Brian afterwards is great. This is not my favorite version. It's definitely way too plodding and slow. Um, yes, that's all I really got to say about that one. You heard it for yourself. But that's it for that one. Let's go on to our final piece. We're going to discuss Live Lounge, BBC Live Lounge. Brian May with rapper Dappy doing a version of "We'll Rock You." It's very interesting to listen to. I'll tell you that much. And to click on the link, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Yo, I was just a little boy in a grown man's game. So I was the man in my
Definitely interesting. Definitely interesting, and much more interesting than it has a right to be. Daffy was a rapper, or is a rapper. I guess he's still active according to Wikipedia. I don't really know much of his stuff. He was a part of the trio N-Dubs. He also had a couple of solo projects. One specifically, he had a couple of different songs. One called "No Regrets," which was a song that he recorded for N-Dubs. Got a big hit. Brian May actually found it, was actually pretty impressed with it. He actually liked it a lot. So that inspired a little bit of communication. Dappy invited Brian May to guest on the song called Rockstar, which, again, I like a lot more than I thought I would. To be honest with you, I can sing along with it. It's fun. It's pretty silly. It's not usually my style, but I don't know, I get a kick out of it. During that time, they were promoting the single. They went around different places, and one of the ones they went to was the BBC and Live Lounge. And while they were there, they did a cover of "We'll Rock You," which is Dappy singing for the first time. In fact, during the song, he actually says, "See, I can sing." He's okay. He's okay. It's fun though. It's a fun version, a little bit of a different take. It's a little more. Some drums are a little bit more differently styled. Definitely Dappy does his own raps. He has the first verse normally, then he kind of raps out the rest with some stuff talking about, rest in peace, Freddie, that kind of stuff. It's all seemingly deferential enough. Brian does have some great guitar jabs going in and out, and he has extended Brian solo where he gets to really kind of jam out towards the end, which makes it an intriguing listen. Definitely better than some of the other ones. I almost rather listen to that than hear another version overall. Again, it's the same arrangement over and over again. It's kind of going to throw something new in there. It's kind of fun, kind of unique. Doesn't kill anybody. It might not be your style. I totally get it. In fact, I could see some of the comments now where people might eviscerate me for saying this is an okay version. I'm not even saying it's great. It's unique and it's interesting. So, all right, there you have it. That will close it out for our listening. We are done with the listening and the talking about. It's time. It is time to go and rank these versions and figure out what the crown jewel is. All right, I'm not going to make you wait any longer. I'm not going to talk too much in between. I'm just going to give you the listing, only a few bits of explanation if I need to. Let's start from the bottom. From bottom to the top, we're going to get that crown jewel at the end. Start off with 5, the Millennium Mix. Other songs mashed in with 5. Forget it, I don't need it. Backing track mix. Okay, this is kind of weird this way. I know a lot of people are like, what the fuck? It's a Queen version. You're bringing it down below some of the 5 stuff. Well, to be frank, it's the backing track version, which is pretty just much stomps and claps the entire time. That's really it. A few vocal things, a few guitar bits at the end. There's nothing much to it. I'd much rather listen to the other versions. And as far as the other 5 stuff go, at least to get new Brian and Roger stuff, right? Get Brian and Roger stuff at the end, jamming out. It's kind of fun, kind of more unique. I'm going to listen to the backing track. I'm going to listen to the regular version. So throwing the back track down here. That's what it is. From there, the 5 radio version and the 5 album version. Take the album over the radio because it's shorter. You don't need any extended intro or outro here. From here, we got a bunch of the Rick Rubins here. 1991 Rubin Zulu scratch acapella, effects acapella, big beat acapella, clap acapella. All the acapellas are fine. It's actually followed by the instrumental. If I'm going to do the remix at all, I might as well do the regular remix, or at least getting them together, because hearing them, I don't need to hear what's below them. So in between these and the next 2 Rubin things, I'm going to slide in that 2011 Starburst just because it's so painfully slow. I prefer to listen to the full Rubin remix rather than a painfully slow Brian May with Tangerine Dream, to be honest with you. I do like the extended instrumental stuff, but that's a different story. Next up, that's where I got Rubin's CD edit, the concise version, but I'd rather listen to the full jam out version. From there, the basic beat sampler. It's great. It's good. But if I'm going to listen to this, I actually prefer the original 1991 remix, which is actually up a few slides. So we'll get there. After the Rubin basic beat sampler, we have the acetate version. Again, it's just a short version. There's a cutoff. It's a great, like the album track, but it cuts off the beginning, cuts off the ending. So that's why it's down so far. I'd rather listen to, yes, the Dappy version above the acetate version, because Dappy is kind of unique, kind of different version. Get some Brian stuff at the end, which you don't get. the acetate version, we only get what we have with the original one. That's just cutting out some stuff. So this has some more unique stuff. I'll give it that. From there, the 46664 with Anastasia. It's fine. That's pretty much a good spot for it. Party at the Palace is next. Brian working his magic there. Some good stuff there. The DMC mix is there next, which is something I thought would be a lot lower. It is a remix, but I kind of had fun with it. I kind of had a little more fun than I thought I was going to have. So I'll slide it in there. The Candlelight version with Brian and Carrie. I could switch that in Part of the Palace. Really you wouldn't get much of difference from me. Same with Amsterdam 2002. Amsterdam 2002. It's fine. But I like Brian and Roger together doing a concert. No two was you couldn't get Queen and Paul Rogers and Queen and Adam Lambert if you didn't have Amsterdam 2002. So it's fun hearing them get back together. From there, the BBC Session 6. Again, the only reason why this is so low is because it's only the slow version. And you really need both versions together. It's really more weighed towards the fast version on its own, better than the slow edited down version with just one verse and a guitar solo there. From there, the Prince's Trust, cast of characters, not all of them great, but a lot of fun. From there, we have the two Bryans, the Brixton one first, then the Brian at the Palace, which I like above Brixton because of the sound quality. Hopefully we'll get that remastered Brixton before too long. From there, the Olympics, it's really Brian that's the only one who's live. But it does have that momentous occasion, that momentous feel, the Freddie live audience moment. It's pretty cool. From there, we have Live Magic, then Live Aid. I mentioned this before in the Freddie era, they're edited down. The only reason why they're so low. From their Freddie Mercury tribute concert, Axel doing his thing. I like it. Then live in Japan, Queen Adam Lambert. Live around the world, Queen Adam Lambert. Those are the two. You know what? I'm going to change my opinion right here and right now. I had this done beforehand, but I'm going to audible, as it were. I'm going to put the Freddie Mercury tribute version above the Adam Lambert versions. Do you think Axl Rose fits the version better than Adam Lambert does? As far as that rock crowd goes, Adam's good, but it's not his song. It's not his song. It's much more of an Axl song. Axl gives that more dangerous feel to it. From there, though, it's all the Paul Rogers versions are together, including Rock Honors, actually. But from order, Zurich 08, Ukraine, London 08, Riga 08, Super Live, Pissarro 05, Prague 05, and then on top would be the VH1 Rock Honors with the three drummers with the Foo Fighters in there. Really kind of cool. Really do appreciate that much. The only reason I couldn't put above that anymore is that this is where the Freddie stuff starts, and it's hard to top Freddie. It's Freddie's baby, really. That's where any version that doesn't have Freddie is going to strike out hard against a version that has Freddie. But for the most part, there are some exceptions, but not many. Wembley Day 2, Wembley Day 1, Hungarian Rhapsody. And this is where I slide in the Rubin remixes, the 12-inch and the regular Rubin remix. This closes out the Rubin remixes. They're quite different. They're quite fun. It has the Freddie vocals, has the addition of having Red Hot Chili Peppers in them as well. They're fun. They're unique. I like to listen to them quite a bit, at least the full-out versions of them. From there, the Pepsi ad version. I love this because of the arrangement. I know it's kind of, you're seeing me over Wembley, over Hungarian Rhapsody, really? Well, Freddie was kind of leggy. They were kind of around the middle at that point as far as their versions went. Straightforward, the same version over and over again at this point. Still great. The reason why they're still up there is because of Freddie's charisma. The Pepsi ad version, I do love the arrangement. I love the ending version. So that's why that's there. Above that, Rio 1985. Can't beat that Freddie version. No, that's much better. From there, the movie mix. Again, better with the visuals, but I do love hearing that unreleased concert version, which is in great quality. From there, the raw sessions, the alternative version with the intro play chatter, rather the intro chatter, the intro count in, different vocal take, the improv guitar solo. The only reason it's not up any higher is because its guitar solo is not done. It's definitely a work in progress. From there, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame performance, great thing. Up that John Farnham version, again, love the arrangement. Wish it was Freddie singing it, or even Brian Rogers singing it. I love, but John Farnham's a great singer. I don't want to not give him credit where credit's due. He does a good job. From there, it's the Cyberbarn version. Probably my favorite solo version by far. Roger doing a great job with that. I really definitely going to have to add this to the big Queen playlist, the Roger playlist, as it were, if nothing else. From there, I'm getting towards the nitty gritty here. This is where the album version slides in. So, yeah, it's not my favorite version. Again, this might be overplaying it. Rears its ugly head a little bit. I like the version quite a bit, but I've heard it so many times that I kind of like to hear something different. From there, we got Live Killers. Nothing wrong with it. Better than the album version because you get the crowd. It gets the crowd going. The song was written for crowd participation, and this delivers it in spades. Next up, the Von Lichten version. As a football fan, I was a sucker for it. I can't lie. It's got Freddie's voice. It's got the added orchestral stuff, which I'm a sucker for as well. Orchestral big downbeats. Some great new Brian guitar work. Can't go wrong. 3 left. Montreal 81. Song, it speaks for itself. I love that concert. Crowd participation is great. You got 2 left. Do you remember what they are? There's one that's going to surprise you. Or maybe not, because I kind of tipped my hand. And now that I said that, you'll know what I'm talking about. That's right. Number 2 is going to be Milton Keynes and On Fire at the Bowl, which means number 1, my favorite, my crown jewel of We'll Rock You, is not a Freddie version. It's the Songwriters Hall of Fame version. It is the Farnham arrangement done by Brian and Roger. Brian, lead vocal, is fine throughout. So with that being said, you get the cool arrangement, the added effects, the dramatized ending, the big rock out drum ending. You can't go wrong with this. There's some crowd participation. You can definitely have crowd participation in that as well. I know it betrays the fact that it's supposed to be a simple song, the stomp, stomp, clap. There's some of that, and there's some more at the end, which is not that. So you get the best of both worlds without having to go into the full-on, fast, full band version. That's it. That's my crown jewel version, the Songwriters Hall of Fame version. Now, unfortunately, for the playlist on Spotify, that's not available. So it's good for my main list, which I can upload stuff on my YouTube, which is my main Queen one. But for the Spotify one and the Queen Late one, that's where we're going to trickle down, and we'll give you the On Fire at the Bowl live at Milton Keynes, the great live rendition by Freddie. So there you have it. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's rate this bad boy. Does We Will Rock You slide into my top 10? No, it does not, because I give it a 9 out of 11, because we always turn up things up to 11 here on PLD Projects. The genius is the simplicity, but at the same time, I'd much rather have a little more complex song for Queen, because if you're a Queen fan, complex is kind of your thing. So I would say great song. It's going to stand the test of time. I'll slide it at a 9. All right, next week, we're the champions, the other side of this coin, so to speak. It'll be a longer one as well, but not quite as long as this one. Be the champions, they didn't do quite the same amount of times. But there's quite a few Adam Lambert versions, Paul Rodgers versions. We're going to get through them all. But I think this is probably going to be the longest episode we've done. This one might take another 2 weeks too. We'll have to see how it goes. Give me a break. I'm trying to do this. This has been a long, long time coming. So we do have a few ones after that, which are kind of shorter for sure. We'll never hit these heights again for sure. All right. Well, if you like this, though, hit that like, hit that subscribe. Go to my main YouTube channel, hit that like and subscribe. If you're on the audio, please, follow me, download, rate me 5 stars, all that kind of good stuff. It just helps the channel out. Trying to bring more of this content to you. If you want to help out even further, patreon.com/PLD Project. You can help people such as Austin Goodell, Jeremiah Morris, Matthew Kearns, Brandon Buckingham, Jeff Alterman. I could not do it without you folks. I love you guys so much. You mean the world to me. You really help keep the lights on. So, yeah, that's it. Follow me on PLD Project and all sorts of movie and TV stuff over there. 2 meter for White Dudes on Film, Holy Snokes, a Star Wars podcast review, which is my podcast on V. All the stuff we talk about. Yeah, can't wait for you guys to come back for more. But until next time, guys, have the Queen, everybody. Bye now.